Good morning. I'd like to call the December 13th County Board meeting to order. Roll call would indicate all commissioners are present. Please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike, can you, the screen's not on, so I'm not sure if we're live yet. I know the microphones are on, but.
You know, I wonder if we could have a way of knowing whether we're on or not.
Besides that?
Yeah,
Besides that, maybe just even a little toggle switch with a red light.
Well, that red light was flashing though.
Yeah.
Oh, there it comes.
There we are.
Okay.
All right, we're live.
Now we're live. At least it's not a close-up.
Oh, no.
Okay, it appears we're live now. So next we'd be looking for approval of the agenda if there's any additions or corrections. And maybe I'll mention I was going to move C5, which is on consent agenda, just to highway, which we could do on consent too, but I'll just note that now. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda we have in front of us? If not, be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Our next item is the Public Access Forum. Anyone wishing to address the board on issues not found on today's agenda may do so at this time, either by attending the meeting in person or joining virtually. And I don't think we have anybody on the phone or virtual. Okay. Individual comments are limited to 3 to 4 minutes. County board members will not engage in dialogue with speakers, but rather refer the matter to the appropriate county department. A citizen may speak at the Public Access Forum only once per month. Is there anyone here wishing to speak at today's Public Access Forum? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Peter Joseph Wilson. I live at 1108 Celebration Drive, Sartell, Minnesota, 56377. I'm here for a couple different things. One is, last time I was here, I asked some questions and made some comments and recommendations, which appears that no one was interested in complying with or focusing on. But again, we go back to this election issue and the problems we have had, and it appears just on recent recounts around the country, not in Stearns County, there have been some flipovers of elections. And again, it's important, I think, to look at this to a greater extent and also to start complete audits of everything. And I would focus initially on, just out of fairness, on the colleges, the one in town here and also the two over in St. Joe. I would say I would audit all of those, verify they're not filed in other states. I think this has been a lackluster and rather slack way of doing it, but again, I think it's quite important. We see one of the national parties and how they operate in trying to dump this in and allow mass flexibility of voting, and I'm very disappointed with that. Another thing I'm concerned about, and it is on the agenda, but I'm not sure to what extent, I did not see the Sartell individual from the county commissioner show up at the 133 meeting that I attended. I'm sure there are reasons. It seems to be greatly opposed. I'm not speaking for or against as much as I'm saying it does not seem to make any sense to me. Years ago, I was involved, not directly, but I was involved representing a couple of businesses up on the Iron Range Duluth area, and was involved with some others involved in the pollution debacle that they had. And it was kind of interesting. A comment was made after the fact by one of the people who knew the judge, and he said, why don't you go out and look at this site where millions of dollars have been spent people suing each other and bringing this fight on, and just go take a peek at it. I mean, he was up there, he should have known it, went out and he said, it just looks like grassland. Sometimes you have to go out and look at these places to determine if it even makes sense. And again, after many, many, many millions of dollars was spent, people who were impoverished over that debacle, people who pled indigency and had money. I mean, the whole thing was a scam in all levels, but it really only took probably one or two people to walk out there and look at it. And I hope the next time, or with this, that everyone walks out there and looks at these places and says, how in the heck does this make sense? Or, gee, we should have done it sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at today's public access forum? Please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Ralph Carr from 100 Wellington Circle, apartment 206 in Waite Park. I just wanted to give a shout out today to Randy Schreifels and Laura Laudenbach and the entire election team that conducted the post-election audit on November 21st. I was one of the observers there. It was my first time doing it, and I was very impressed with the professionalism, the efficiency, and the courtesy that Mr. Schreifels and Ms. Laudenbach showed to those of us who were observers. They were answering our questions. They were giving us partial results when the results came in. And at the end of the day, when they counted all the ballots in all three precincts in both races and segregated the absentee ballots from the in-person ballots and did everything, all the results came out the same. The voting equipment works right. And I think that's pretty impressive. And I just wanted to give a thanks to both of them and again to their entire team for the work they're doing. And so I think it's really nice to be in a place where everything is transparent. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at today's public access forum? Anyone else? One more time, not seeing anyone else, we will move on to the consent agenda. As I mentioned earlier, I was moved C5 into Public Works. Is there anything else anybody has questions on or comments that they want to make? If not, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. We have a second.
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Let's see. All right. So with that, we'll recess our regular board meeting and open the Human Services Board meeting. Morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Melissa Huberty. I'm the Human Services Administrator. And there are 6 items on the Human Services agenda today, and they are items D1 through D6 on packet page 132 through pages 143. The first board item is D1 and is the Minnesota Department of Health Eliminating Health Disparities Initiative grant on page 132, and we're seeking support to complete a grant application with the Department of Health to assist in gaining better health outcomes in disparate communities. The second item is board item D2 on page 135, and is to approve a contract with Avivo for employment services. Board item D3 is on page 137 to approve the contract with Central Minnesota Mental Health Center detoxification services. Board item D4 is on 138 and is the grant amendment for the Minnesota Department of Human Services for our Child and Teen Checkup Program grant. D5 is on page 141 to approve the grant award contract with the Minnesota Department of Human Services for the Adult Mental Health Initiative Plan funding for the Community Support Program services side of it for calendars year 2023 and 2024. And finally, board item D6 is on page 143 and is Human Services claims paid on behalf of clients from November 11th through December 2nd, and that's for informational purposes only. And I'm available for questions after that.
I just had a question on D2 with that employment services. Can you maybe just fill me in on how does that work or what?
We have a contract that we are mandated to provide for services for people who are on public assistance programs to help them get back into the workforce, and that's the contract we have with Avivo. And I believe that's due up for RFP this next year.
So then they basically help them fill out applications?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
I don't know where the most appropriate place is to bring this up. Maybe it would be our, well, it used to be annual planning session for the upcoming year. But it would be helpful, maybe for all of us, to review why we separate out or present ourselves as separating out the human services agenda, when in fact I would say that we separate it out in name only. If it actually accomplishes something, I appreciate that. I would like to be reminded what it accomplishes. And if it doesn't, maybe it's time for changing that. It's not a big item, but I think it can be more confusing than helpful.
I think Melissa might have an answer to that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lenzmeyer, I do have an answer to that. It's in statute. I'd be happy to have the statute changed, but up until this point, we did review it in the past year. I think it was brought up at a previous board meeting, and so we looked into it again, and it is in statute that we separate it out.
I know that when, okay, you know, back when I started this job, once we parked the ox carts out in the parking lot, we would have a separate meeting and a separate room even for the Human Services Board. But and then we consolidate. This current arrangement was seen as a improvement over that. I'm not complaining about that. We still get the job done, but it is on its face a confusing item. But thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Clark?
I'd like to move approval of items 1 through 5 in the Human Services.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Persky. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will adjourn the Human Services Board meeting and resume our regular board meeting with the Auditor Treasurers. Good morning.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us again. Today, we just would like to give you a little bit of an election review of how this year's election went. So to get us started, we're going to just talk about who's involved again. I know we've covered this a little bit, but the Elections Department, of course, Randy Schreifels has been a detriment part of the election process this year. We have an amazing staff that's been with us through the 2020 election, and then again this year, and some of them have been there a little bit longer than that. But special thank you to Julie, Mary Kay, Jocelyn, Nikki, and of course Roxanne, who's been my right side this year while I was learning my role. We had many, many departments that have helped us. We had the Attorney's Office answering a lot of legal questions. The Auditor Treasurer Department, almost all of them worked Election Day, which was very helpful for us. We had building facilities, highway, human resources, IT, procurement, property services, and the Sheriff's Department all assist with different aspects of the election. Stearns County hired 17 election judges that worked between Service Center and St. Cloud City Hall. Many of those had been with us before and have come back year after year, and then we did have quite a few newbies this year too. As far as cities and townships, we did 1,400 election judge training courses. We had the St. Cloud City absentee location that was new this year because it wasn't at the admin center. We moved it over to City Hall. And then we had 9 direct voting locations this year, so including Stearns County Service Center, St. Cloud City Hall, Melrose, Cold Spring, Paynesville, Sartell, Sauk Center, St. Augusta, and St. Joseph. There were 71 precincts open on Election Day. Many of them were open, 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. And then we had 23 mail ballot precincts. This is our election calendar. Of course, we didn't put everything in there, but you can see the bulk of our activities that happened after the March election, starting in April, where we went to a training provided by the Secretary of State. And then in May, we already started we were preparing for the primary with our candidate filings, ordering ballots. June, we spent a lot of time training our election judges. And then the primary also started in June for absentee voting, 46 days before the election. We did our testing in July and more judge training in July. The August election happened at the beginning of August there. And then we immediately started the general election process with candidate filing, ordering ballots. I don't know if you guys know, there was over 150,000 ballots that we ordered with 150 different ballot styles. That's what happens in Stearns County. There's a lot of different styles of ballots. With the general absentee started in September, the general testing in October, and then canvassing in October. We also did the head judge refresher training in October. And then the post-election review and canvassing in November. We did a lot of community outreach. You guys have seen us a lot this year, trying to get education out to our citizens. We did several different radio broadcasts, including CASM, KNSI, and WJON. We did multiple board presentations to try to help educate on the election processes. We did some organizational communication, so the Isaiah organization and the League of Women Voters. And then also lots of public notices. So other than the press releases and social media, there's multiple postcards that are sent out to citizens in regards to the absentee process, the mail ballot precincts, and then voter registration.
Hey, Laura, before you go on, can
Yeah.
I maybe just go back, was
Yeah.
it 1 screen or 2 screen? Right, okay. So just the question that popped up. So you have in June the primary absentee. Is that when the ballots go out?
So
The absentee ballot?
absentee voting started, I think, June 23rd or somewhere around there.
Well,
So,
which lead me to the next question. Then in July, you do the primary testing. What happens, is that just for the machines?
yeah. So we do the testing. So the voting absentee starts in June. And then we do test all of the machines before Election Day. Because at the June absentee, we're not using the machines yet. We're just doing the envelope process, so.
Okay, well, that's what piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
Because if you did the primary testing and something didn't work, and you sent out the absentee ballots, would they have to be hand counted then if it was something, let's say with the ballot? No?
No, because in the primary, the PAT, the public accuracy test, we're just testing machines to make sure they're reading the ballot styles.
Okay.
Yep, so, which everything came out right on, so.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Clark?
I think you inferred but didn't say it. 7 days before the election, they could start going into the machines.
Right.
So they can't go into the machines, so they're tested before they can go
Yeah.
in the machines.
Yeah.
Which is why I know if Randy was here, he'd be saying that's why they're hoping it could go to 14 days to give them more time.
Right.
But and the next slide, I had a just an observation. You have two groups mentioned, that you had organization, communication, but you also met with a number of individuals, but also some informal, they might not have been an organized group, but groups that had
Right.
concerns about election process or the machines and other
Yes.
things. So
Yeah.
I would hate to have anybody walk away from, or take a picture thinking that was the only communication.
Yes.
Because I know that you had significant, which was important,
Correct. Yes.
communication.
Yeah, we had.
Don't want anybody, see anybody think they're not
Yeah.
seeing themselves up there.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, lots of emails and lots of education that way as well. So this year's election compared to 2018, we're comparing to 2018 because it was the last state election. We actually had a higher turnout in 2018 with a 75% turnout. This year we had 70%. You can see that we have a little more, our registered voters went up in 2022 with 95,000 versus the 88. But our people voting and that percentage actually went down. So we didn't have quite as many people voting this year. If we look at election day for the general, in 2022 we had almost 50,000 voters on election day versus the 16,000 absentee. So election day, that's 47%. Voted on actual election day, and 16% voted absentee, which was an increase from the 2018. So 14% voted absentee in 2018, but we had a much higher election day turnout in 2018 with 60% in that 53,000.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Percy.
Say, those numbers on the decrease, could some of those be related to the college? I mean, because in the past, college has been voting on campus. Now with the ability for the students to vote absentee and then vote in their local elections for city council, school board, and things like that, are there more students that are, and then also we had COVID, that perhaps that's not necessarily, you know, a site of the population outside the colleges?
Right. Yeah, we would have to look at specific precincts on their turnout, but definitely could have been a contributing factor. So.
Because I believe a good number of students now are voting in their home opposed to voting on campus.
Right. Okay, so how did people vote this year? We had 51% of our citizens vote by mail. 43% were in person or direct, which was the 7 days before the election. And then about 6% dropped off or used our drop box. The drop off, you know, if they were dropping somebody else's off, that was a tracked thing that we would do in our office. But you can see most people were either in person or by mail. We have a lot of questions regarding mail ballot precincts, and in Stearns County we have the 23 mail ballot precincts. The voter turnout in mail ballot precincts this year was 72%. It was actually higher than the non-mail ballot, so we had an average of 70% that had polling places, so just a little bit higher than polling places. All right. Turn it over to Roxanne.
Good morning,
Morning.
Commissioners. I'm Roxanne Geertz, Election Supervisor for Stearns County. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happens after the election. Some people think maybe after Election Day, you know, it's all wrapped up. There's a lot to do after the election. So one of the things that happens is we have the post-election review. And we had that on Monday, November 21st at the Stearns County Service Center. And what happens at the post-election review, so precincts are randomly drawn at the 2022 General Canvassing Board. So the number of precincts to be reviewed is determined by our voter registration. So in Stearns County, we pick 3, or the canvassing board picks 3 precincts, and that's because we fall in the range of 50,000 to 100,000 registered voters. Anything over 100,000, that would increase to, I believe, 4. So the precincts that were drawn for review were the Collegeville Township Precinct 1, the City of Sauk Center, and St. Wendell Township Precinct 1. So the Post-election review is a hand count of the ballots for the U.S. representative and the governor and lieutenant governor. What we found in the post-election review, it was 100% accurate with the hand count totals matching the machine counted totals. I'll go through a little bit of what took place there. So in a post-election review, we had 4 teams of 2 election judges. And we go through and we count them by precinct. One table would get the absentee for that precinct. One group would get the polling place ballots for that precinct. And so we take those ballots, they hand count them into packs of 25. If it comes out, we move on. If not, they're recounted by either that table or it goes to another table to recount. But we found in our review that everything came out as expected. So our next slide here talks about voter intent for Collegeville Township 1. So the machines did what they were supposed to do. Collegeville Township Precinct 1, the governor and lieutenant governor, there was one target, one mark that was outside the target. So as on the example there's an X next to the oval. So the machine counted that as a undervote. And so once we went through and the election judges counted those ballots, they determined in that group that the judges at the table need to determine voter intent. So by looking at that, they determined that that actually should have went for the Republicans Scott Jensen and Matt Burke. So that was one change that we had in a post-election review. And again, anytime there's a situation like that, it's up to the election judges, not to the election staff, but it is up to the election judges that are counting those ballots.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Persky?
Yeah.
Roxanne, when I was at the poll this time, I noticed something a little bit different, and that is that when we put our ballots in, the judge asked, could you just wait a minute? And then she said, okay, that's fine. Now, I believe she was checking to see if there were any errors or any mistakes or there was something not valid about my count.
So as you put your ballot into the machine.
Right, so just wait a minute.
Yes,
is that just to see that
the flag comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, so during training, we want to make sure that if you were at the polling place before the voter leaves, we want to make sure that your ballot is counted and what determines, because if something is wrong, the machine will give you a message. Okay. And then at that time, you have the option to correct it or override it. So they probably wanted to make sure that the red flag came up and the statement said your ballot was counted.
Right, and I thought that was a great thing that was going on. Now, in this case, would that have showed up or not? Because I can have the choice of not voting for a person.
Right, so this was outside the target area of what the machine counted.
So this wouldn't have flagged?
That would have not have flagged it, correct. Okay. It counted it as a undervote.
Correct, okay. Yeah.
So the state does when they, at their canvassing board, after they go through their canvassing board, they go ahead and they pick precincts statewide to recount or to audit. So Collegeville Township P1, which we did in our post-election review, which was randomly picked by our canvassing board, was also randomly picked at the state level to do the post-election audit. We were notified that that will happen between February 1st through March 21st. We have not received any notification yet from the Secretary of State. They will also send us a list of what we need to prepare for them when they come and do the audit. Stearns County had one precinct chosen in the 6th congressional district, so that is a race that they will take a look at. So it was interesting that it was randomly picked for us, and then it was randomly picked at the state. So we actually watched that live stream of the state canvassing board, and yeah, that was interesting that the same precinct was picked.
So Roxanne, like,
yes.
how do they pick them?
They actually picked them right out of a hat or an envelope. They threw all the list of the precincts into an envelope from that congressional district, and they picked 4 out, and Yeah, we were one of them. It's been a couple years since we've been picked. I don't believe we were picked in 2020, and I don't believe we were picked in 2018, but, so yeah, they'll be contacting us, and we'll have that scheduled sometime between February and March, so. A couple upcoming elections that we have. So we have the Melrose Area School District. We'll have a special election on February 14th. And in March, we have the township elections. Those are the two elections that we have been made aware of so far. So, but yeah, we had a lot of help, and another thanks to all the county departments that helped us out. But yeah, we couldn't have done it without them. So. Any questions for us?
Any questions for Roxanne
Oh,
or
yeah.
Laura? Commissioner Lesmeyer?
The same laws, the same processes, the same procedures apply then to the township and school board elections as apply to the typical primary and general elections?
For the most part, so for example, the township, I think their absentee voting period is 30 days versus the 46.
Okay, 30 days versus 40, okay.
Right. There are some townships, depending on your voter registration count, if it's under, I believe, a 400 or 500, they're not required to use the Omni ballot, which is the assisted voting devices. So there's a few differences, but for the most part, all of the processes and procedures and laws are the same.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Persky?
Yes, did we have any reports of any irregularities that came out as far as voter harassment or voter fraud at all? Did you see anything, any reports of that?
No.
Okay.
Nope, we have not received any emails or any calls on that.
Okay. Well, again, I appreciate the outstanding job you did last time and this time as well. And I don't want to speak for the chair, but I'm very impressed with the way you're doing things.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Commissioner
Just would echo that. I've said it separately, but very much appreciate the staffs as well as the broader groups of employees, as well as the election judges' diligence and patience with lots of people having lots of questions. And there's, a variety of information or maybe questions out there. And the painstaking approach you've taken, I think, is really helpful. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And I think, too, with all the staff time and hours put in,
Oh, geez.
I think a lot of people don't realize,
Yeah.
how this actually works. I mean, yeah, if we were a small county, it probably wouldn't be quite as intense, but, when you got a large voting population, I can see there's a lot of work. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, 150 different kinds of ballots.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, next item is environmental services. Morning, Becky.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Becky Schlorf, Environmental Services Division Supervisor. This item before you on packet page 146 is to conduct a public hearing to consider enacting Ordinance 646 regarding feedlot-related ordinance changes. The Feedlot Review Committee did review the proposed changes on September 28th and recommended approval to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed the changes on October 20th and recommends approval to the County Board. Local officials were notified in a memo on October 28th, and the public notice for the public hearing was published in November 29th. The changes are primarily corrections, except for two changes. And one of those is a feedlot property line setback that would go from 50 feet to 10 feet, provided there's a common owner of the two parcels. And then the second one is to maintain an open air swine basin restriction. With the statute change at the legislature this last session, that went away at the state level. So this language change would keep that consistent in our ordinance. And that is all. I have no public comments that came in.
So Becky, just a question on the swine manure basin. So let's just say, I have a earthen lagoon, and if I have a feedlot, where you have swine, in an open feedlot, so is this strictly, if you build a new barn, that the manure pit has to be under the barn, and you can't, let's say I build a new barn in my place, and I say, well, instead of putting a manure pit underneath, I'm just going to use my earthen lagoon. You're saying I couldn't do that, or that's what this ordinance change says?
So, correct. The language that's been in place for 20 years prohibited new or existing open-air swine, or new open-air swine basins. So yes, in your example, you would not be able to convert an existing liquid manure storage area to swine if it didn't have a cover, whether that's a building or some sort of cover.
So even if it's already existing, I couldn't let it?
So the language related to existing is that if existing are allowed, I don't know that we even have one. The state was going to maybe give me an example of one that we might have had, but I didn't hear back from them on that. But if we had a situation where there was an existing, if they needed to expand, they would not be able to expand it. So there wouldn't be additional nonconformity, I guess I would say.
Okay, so I'm just going to use my place, for instance. So our old dairy barn was a farrowing, converted to a farrowing barn with a manure pump that pumps into an outdoor lagoon. So if I was to put sows back in there, then would this say I couldn't use that to clean out the barn?
Right, because it had been converted to dairy. So you're asking to convert it back?
I mean, this is like in 1970. You know, it's been a hog farrowing facility for all of those years.
So it was swine, it was dairy, and
No,
now...
it was dairy, and then, you know, my folks took everything out and made it a farrowing barn with a manure pump that pumped into the earthen lagoon.
Okay, so yeah, if
I mean,
it
it's probably
existed, it's
rare.
allowed to remain.
Okay.
But if it's a conversion, it's not allowed.
Okay.
It never has been. For the last 20 years that this has been in place, this ordinance change is not changing any of that.
Okay.
But if the county board wanted to allow certain situations for open-air swine basins or conversions to, then, we could look at language going down that road.
Or if you did it without, let's say, a manure pit underneath, you could use that lagoon, but you'd have to cover it.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions before we open the Commissioner Person?
What size of operations does this apply to? Does this apply to small farms, small hobby farms as well?
Correct. It's across the board. One example, though, where it wouldn't apply is a truck wash facility. So we do have some of those in Stearns County because swine are particularly susceptible to disease, so they're cleaning their trucks out. And that is so diluted that the state had ruled that that is not, under the statute when it existed, did not require a cover. But we do have one in Stearns County, and they did decide to cover it. So, but it does apply to all size operations.
Okay.
All right. With that, I guess we can open the public hearing. So with that, I'll open the public hearing on the consideration to the changes to Ordinance 646 regarding the feedlots. Is there anyone here wishing to speak at the public hearing on this matter? And anyone here wishing to speak? One last time, anyone wishing to speak? With that, we'll close the public hearing. And what's the wishes of the board?
I'd move to approve the changes.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen.
I can second that.
Thank you, Commissioner
But
Lensmeyer.
I'll have some comment.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, the only comment I have is I'm seeing some interest in the very small farms among our in the community, pattern kind of after the Dakota County model that was created, say, 20-some years ago for the then Hmong immigrant community, and these farms were 20 and 30 acres and specialized in garden crops. which they sold at Metro, the Metro Farmers Markets. I guess at the time there were about a dozen of those all across the Metro. So there may be some merit in the future to explore and learn about that, because I'm hearing some interest in doing something along the same line. Maybe that won't work here, but maybe it will. So we should be, it will take some preparation for that discussion.
And I would guess these are for more larger confinement type.
Yeah.
If you have pasture-raised hogs, this really doesn't apply to that situation. Okay, any further comments? Otherwise, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Becky. Next up is Parks. Morning, Ben.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Ben Anderson, Parks Director. The agenda item I have for you in front of you today is item G1. It's the consideration to accept a land donation, purchase public art, and authorize the county administrator to execute agreements to complete the land transaction. So the county's been working with the landowners to obtain the remaining approximately 3,000 feet of linear property needed to construct the Beaver Island Trail, and that can be seen on packet page 167 with the map that's there. The property owners and the Parks Department have come to a tentative agreement for the donation that includes the county complete appraisals on the 4 parcels and the county purchase a public art display for the trail. The total cost of the county for the donation would be about $16,000, $6,000 for the appraisals, and $10,000 for the artwork. The artwork proposal can be viewed on packet page 168 through 169. The appraisals have been completed, and the property being donated is valued at a little over $49,000. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Ben? If not, we'd be looking for a motion.
What's the significance of the artwork?
It was part of the agreement from the donors, and that they would like to see the public art display along that, and that was part of one of the requirements of them being willing to donate the property.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
what's the valuation of the property? I mean, it would seem like, I was kind of looking at that and wondering about it too. It certainly looks like it'll be very nice, but I'm guessing that the $16,000 is significantly less than if we had paid for the properties.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Nope. So the appraisals identified the value of the property at a little over $49,000. So it's about a $33,000 value to the county.
So that was a pretty good contribution by the landowner.
Right.
It's going to be an important part of the trail too. I mean, you've been working on this for quite a while.
Now, this was the last piece to finish that trail, right?
Correct, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This is the last section that will complete that. And as you may recall, we do have state and federal grants to hopefully start and complete construction next summer.
Okay. All right. At this point, we'd be looking for a motion to approve or deny.
I'll move that.
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. We have a second.
Seconded.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Ben, thank you on that. I know that's been a long time coming, so a very long time coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we might be needing to take a bike ride field trip when it's done.
Oh. Yeah, we can probably go all the way west to the county line.
Absolutely. Well, we'd need many days then. At least I would.
All right, next up is Public Works. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning. If it's all right with the board, I'd like to start with the item that was pulled from the consent agenda because the city of Sartell is going to attend for the regular agenda item. I'll kind of start with the summary, and I do have Sarah Utch here because she worked closely with our maintenance management to come up with this. So she may jump in and correct me at some point, but Just a little background information. This is probably one of the more complex budget adjustments we've done. But as I've mentioned to the board in the past, and again, it's on packet page 32 if you want to refer back to that, prices for everything are going up, including, pickups, plows, et cetera. I don't know if any of you saw the presentation at AMC. One of my colleagues talked about the significance of the snow plows going up and the delay in deliveries. So the first item we started with, we had budgeted for a mini excavator in 2022, and we budgeted about $120,000. We started looking at a smaller mid-size excavator, and of course, since prices have gone up, that actual price for that excavator would be just over $213,000. And the reason we wanted to upgrade is there would be less need to rent excavators for certain size concrete pipe, certain ditching projects, because it has a longer reach than that mini excavator did. And that's the reason that our management staff, once they looked at the capacity of our trailers, they felt that this would be a much better use of our funding, especially as I get into the delivery timeline on the other items that are part of this budget adjustment.
Just one quick, as long as you're in the excavator, does the county have trailers big enough to
Yes,
haul it?
that's one thing. They looked at the outlying shops to make sure that the trailers and the equipment we have would be able to handle this excavator. So that is something that our superintendent looked into before changing this request.
And then the other question, I don't remember what month we approved the $120,000 for the mini excavator. That was a few months ago, right? Or I don't remember.
We had something as part of our original 2022 budget, and maybe Sarah can help me here.
The $120,000 would have been part of the 2022 adopted budget a year ago today, basically.
So then it was never ordered, or?
Right,
Okay.
right. Yep. And one of the pickups had been ordered and had been canceled by the dealer. So then we had decided to forego one of the pickups and use those funds towards the larger excavator.
Okay. So in regards to that, so I see that, what is it, $213,000 or something like that for that mid-size excavator. So how much in a year's time would you say rental of a excavator runs?
And I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, how much. We generally will rent it by the month. So we coordinate all the work between the 3 maintenance districts. And I cannot remember the monthly rate. I'm sorry. I can certainly get back to you with that amount. But then there will be something that comes up outside of that month where we have to rent it for a week. Obviously, when we rent it for a month, it's a much better deal, the economy of scale. So there are different times that we have to then all of a sudden go back and rent an excavator for a week. Like I said, ditching projects with the reach, or as an example, our County Road 72 project, there was a pipe that the consultant designer missed in the plans. And so the county was able to supply the pipe. We ordered it, so we didn't, but then the contractor did not want to come back and do that extra work. Obviously, they were booked, and they were trying to scramble to finish everything toward the end of the season. So we thought, well, our forces can put this in. It's, an additional, it won't go on the project cost, but we needed to rent an excavator to be able to handle that size concrete pipe, because anything we have is too small to lift those sections, even of a 24-inch concrete pipe.
Yeah, and I guess my reason for going there was, because you'd be bumping a plow truck kind of out further, correct?
And part of that is availability of plow trucks, and then, yes, of course, the cost. Because that cost has gone up so significantly over the last year, but we've been bumped. We haven't gotten our, trying to think how far back, is it well, we haven't gotten our 2022 plows, obviously. And so that'll also help us absorb some of the costs. So it's one plow truck that is being bumped, correct?
But it's not bumped solely because of that, because
Correct.
your cost was going up $70,000 per plow truck. And so there was 2 in 2022's budget, 2 in 2023's budget for plow trucks at $250,000 times 4. And so they couldn't, they're $310,000 or $320,000 now, so they could not get 4. They had to forego one anyways because they didn't have the funds to do that. And so we decided that they could only get 3 regardless, so let's use the savings from one of them towards the excavator. And I do think building facilities had use for it as well. If I remember right, they had requested one in their budget, and we requested that the two of you work together to just get one.
So 3 trucks would technically still be on order.
Yes.
Yes.
There are 3 on one.
It's just then extra money would go toward the excavator. Okay, because I was just curious, when you're talking 200-some thousand for an excavator, and if you're only using it X so many hours and it's parked, obviously they depreciate like everything else. And I know when you rent, it's timing with rentals too. You got to make sure they have one for you to rent.
And then we have to hope that we don't get 2 weeks of rain in that month that we have the rented excavator. So there is a timing thing. So this will be, we'll have to be able to avoid some of that intricate planning and finger crossing for good weather while we have that excavator. And our fleet manager has taken a look, and it's not like we're going to have a plow in our fleet that's on its last legs. Certainly it may impact our resale value after we get the new plows, just because it will be a year older and have that many more miles on it. But we're not leaving ourselves in dire straits. It's just likely going to impact that resale value of the old plow.
And I suppose it's probably hard to find a used excavator too that would be less money, huh?
It's difficult to find a used excavator, and then to make sure that it's going to be something that we're not having problems with. We have bought used equipment, and we have a line item in our budget. So we've gotten crack sealing kettles. We generally want to do that with the smaller items, where it's a little bit easier for us to give it a thorough review to make sure it's going to be in decent condition.
Okay. I guess my concern was they didn't want to see a big piece of hardware sitting there, because, and you could almost say the same with some of the plow trucks, because if it doesn't snow, in the winter they're not being used, which is good. They last that much longer, but, obviously in the summer they get used for hauling gravel and road work. But that was some of my main questions just for asking about the excavator part. So I guess you hit the plow trucks at the same time with the cost going up.
Right.
So those are my questions. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions on those capital purchase items or.
Mr. Chair, you answered my questions, so
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda item on the changes for the Highway Department.
So move.
Thank you, Commissioner
A
Lenzmeyer.
second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So for my regular agenda item, we are on packet page 170 in your agendas. So just a little bit of history on this County Road 133 alignment study. In 2004, obviously development was booming. I'm not going to go give you a brief history of time, don't worry. But so construction began on this new alignment of County Road 133 in Sartell between 12th Avenue and Pinecone Road. This was then in 2008, the second section was completed between Tyson Road, and 12th Avenue. And that as that development, that road basically runs on the northwest side of, as that development was built, this roadway was built. So it was built as a 4-lane county highway. And at that point, the road stopped at Tyson Road. As we all know, development came to a screeching halt in that 2008 to 2010 time period, and the road sat there. But in the meantime, we did turn back our section of County Road 133, basically along Pinecone Road from 2nd Street South to Heritage, and then along 6th Street South between Heritage and 19th Avenue and Sartell. We turned that back to the city and put our state aid designation on that 4-lane highway that was built. It's an urban highway, 30 mile an hour. And it runs between, like I said, Pinecone Road and Tyson Road. So as that road sat there with barricades at the end, we started to get questions from property owners on where that alignment would eventually go. And generally, those are the property owners that are impacted between 19th Avenue and Tyson Road, where that could potentially go. In addition, we saw some properties being purchased and buildings being put up. And so we became concerned that we would be out of options and have a dead-end segment on our county state aid highway system. So we were able to secure federal planning funds through the St. Cloud Area Planning Organization to determine A, if this alignment should move forward, and B, if so, where. We hired SRF Consulting Group through a federal selection process, and we had a project advisory team that consisted of the county, the city of Sartell, Leasock Township, and a representative from the St. Cloud APO. We did start out with 7 alignments, and those are found on page 185 in your packets. So several were eliminated as we went through, and those could be reasons related to wetlands, overall cost, did they actually improve mobility? But we were really looking at this as a future section of the overall beltway to improve that mobility through this northeastern part of the county, and not obviously that far north, but through Sartell anyway, because that is one of the river crossings that exists. So we brought 4 alignments to the first public open house, one of which was a no-build option. There's an evaluation matrix on page 189 in your packets that showed how we evaluated all 4 of those. These are environmental aspects like wetland impacts, if we're going to have muck-type soils, how it impacts traffic, does it actually improve mobility, overall cost, of course, and that also relates to right-of-way costs and acquisition, the number of property owners we are going to have to purchase from, and then public input was one of the factors. So we narrowed, after that first public open house, we narrowed it down to alternatives C and D, and those are shown on page 190 in your agenda packet. I want you to note that alternative C, that is a build option, and that is not the exact alignment. Because of the nature of these federal planning funds, we can't do full environmental studies or final design. So this is kind of a 10,000-foot level planning view of the overall alignments. So alternative C, like I said, is a build. Planning level cost, and this is a big spread, I realize it, but between $1.5 and $2.3 million. We're looking at right-of-way costs. We would have to do some rerouting of 6th Street South to make it come in at a right angle in the middle of the curve of the newly built alternative C. Alternative D is the no-build option, also shown on page 190. And one main cost with this is we would have to pay back a prorated amount of the state aid money that we used for our portion of building that new alignment way back in 2004 and 2008. And again, that's a prorated based on how long they expect a reconstruction to last. Once we had narrowed it down to alternative C and D, the project advisory team, through consensus, basically landed on alternative C. I do want to note that Leasock Township, who was part of that project advisory team, has since written a letter that they are opposed to alternative C and prefer the do-nothing option. That is on page 243 in your packets, but I can get to that when we talk about public comment a little bit. So we brought alternative C back to the public open house. A lot of property owners who are in that neighborhood where the 4-lane highway borders it on the north and northwest were very opposed to it. All public comments that we received in writing are summarized on pages 195 to 197 of your agenda packet. It's actually starts on page 19 in your report. We also did, as you're aware, receive 3 emails yesterday from property owners. Those will be added to the final document. The 3 property owners that emailed the board, and I was copied on it, were opposed to building anything. Again, as a summary of these comments, the neighbors who abut the existing 4-lane highway are obviously opposed to it making that connection, because once it's connected, not a dead end, traffic will increase on it because it will be the new through route. Homeowners that are directly impacted, where a portion of their property needs to be purchased, there's a potential for a total buyout. They are, as expected, opposed. We did receive several comments from property owners, including at least one Sartell business owner, and I only know that he's a business owner because he identified himself as such, but at least 3 that were very strongly in favor and made a point of saying they didn't feel that they should speak up at the open house because it was a time for those property owners to air their frustrations. So before I turn it over to Sartell, that I believe is here, I do want to just kind of summarize what the board's options are and what the next steps would be. because Sartell discussed this at their council meeting last night, and I have Anna Gruber here from the city to relay what the city's thoughts were on this. But if the board does not support the advisory team recommendation, we would remove our county state aid highway designation from the 4-lane section of roadway that was built. We would have to pay back roughly $270,000 and again, the exact proration will determine on when we remove that CASA designation. We would have to pay that back to our state aid construction account. And we would be able to take that state aid mileage and put it on a different segment of roadway that we would want to make state aid. Then we would begin negotiations with the city of Sartell. Would the county consider taking back those sections of 133 that we turned over to the city? Would it be part of our overall road? Because those are municipal state aid street routes, we wouldn't necessarily need to put our county state aid highway designation on it, but it would be an ongoing negotiation with the city. And the project would be done as far as the county is concerned. If the board would support what the project advisory team recommended, and that's alternative C, county highway staff would need to do more surveying and soils investigation to determine that final roadway alignment so that we could begin working with those impacted property owners throughout the corridor. The study only determined that general vicinity, so that final alignment once pinned down, then we could begin having those more detailed discussions with the property owners. And so if the board would so choose to approve the advisory team's recommendation, there is a resolution on your agenda packet, page 171, that I would ask the board to adopt. But before we go that far or answer any other questions, I do want to turn it over to Anna Gruber from the city of Sartell.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I know I was here a couple meetings ago to express our support from a city's standpoint on alternative C, which is to make some sort of a connection. I know that that route is to be determined specifically after we do more surveying and really review the land and determine what would be most appropriate. But from the city's standpoint, we did discuss it in length. If you want to, you're welcome to go watch the council meeting. But the unanimous vote was that they would support some sort of a connection in one way or another using that alternative C. And we're very opposed, strongly opposed to the do nothing option of Pine Cone. As I expressed at the last time that we were here for the meeting to discuss this, we all saw what traffic looked like in Sartell when Pine Cone is used as the main route, and really support the APO's regional approach of using 2nd Street, which then turns into County Road 133, as a main thoroughfare for that truck traffic going through so that Pine Cone can remain more of a local route for our residents and county residents as well. So we did approve last night at the council meeting a resolution for support of alternative C in some fashion to be determined at a later date of what that exact connection route looks like. Happy to answer any questions of Sartell viewpoint or thoughts, if you have any.
Commissioner Bergen?
As I look through this, I'd like to reconsider option A there for a long-term plan. It looks like that one will keep through traffic out of downtown downtown Sartell and route it all the way around. I would think we'd want to keep the through traffic out of downtown Sartell.
I just want to clarify that, is that the one that connects up to the County Road Forward 133 intersection, or the alternative?
The one in red?
Yep. So we have two of them. Initially, we considered one that came into what a lot of people in the local area call 5 Points, the County Road Forward 133 intersection. And then as we eliminated that, a lot of which was because of overall expense, the new alternative A stopped at 19th Avenue, where there was a roundabout at the north-south 19th Avenue. So I just want to clarify if it's the one that crosses Town Line Road, or gets close to Town Line Road, I apologize, but basically connects into 4 and 133 much further to the west.
Yes, it's the circular-looking one,
Yep.
or curved-looking one.
I'll
But I
add
thought, just from an observation, it also doesn't impact any building sites?
So alternative A, the red-shaped one, or red color and the more curved one, does actually cut through, and you can't see it on this map, but there has been a platted Phase 2 of Northern Meadows, which is, you can kind of see the first phase of Northern Meadows just below the line there, and they have purchased, and on page 185, yeah. There is a whole second phase, and so the developer, Mr. Leggett, had spoke in length with the project team at various open houses and then also at our stakeholder meetings, opposing that route because it would cut right through his platted development. So that route was primarily eliminated, and as well as the orange one, due to it cutting directly through his future phases of Northern Meadows.
I guess I'm kind of in agreement with Commissioner Mergen. I think I said this the last time you were here is, I mean, if you're thinking long-term, you know this is all going to develop on both sides if you go with C, and it's going to be all housing. To me, if you're going to do a bypass, you want to bypass. And I just foresee this. I know you mentioned this is a municipal highway, basically, at 30 miles an hour, but I would agree with Commissioner Mergen that longer-term view versus, just because the developer, and I know it's property tax, it's population stuff for Sartell, but I guess I'm kind of on the same vein as I just think long-term going around. We don't know what the costs are going to be. We can guess that all day long, but that's just my opinion too. So.
One item, a reason that, even the shorter versions of some of those that go straight across and come in at a right angle to 19th Avenue were eliminated was the amount of significant wetland impacts. And if you look at packet page 185, you can kind of see they're grayed out, but the amount of wetland impacts with all of those. And then we looked at, so once this property is platted, there's square foot value for that property, for the red alignment or the orange alignment. Once you're going through platted lots, that square foot value increases significantly as well. So in addition to the wetland costs, both buying the credits for mitigation, building through the wetland, and then the additional right-of-way, we figured the cost to put the project out so far that it wouldn't ever get done. And so I think, and I can't really speak for the entire project advisory team, but I think that was part of the thinking, is that we wanted something that could be buildable in the next 10 years, if this was going to make a difference. But if I'm remembering correctly, that's kind of the whole thought process that we went through.
But down the road, will that option C really accomplish anything? That's
we
my
will
question.
Control access. There will only be roadway access onto there, or access to larger parcels. So if it does develop into housing on both sides, we wouldn't have individual driveway accesses. It would be road access points onto there, much like we have right now on the portion that's already built. We have an access point at 12th Avenue, and then we have Tyson Road. And so the roadway system that would serve the individual homes would be off of our County Road 133. So the access control helps mobility in and of itself. And then, we would certainly need to be looking at what we do at those intersections for safety improvements, but that would be much further down the road, no pun intended, during final design.
Does this decision have to be made today?
It doesn't.
Okay.
I think it would just bring some finality to it. The consultant's work will be done after this. Like I said, we would have them incorporate the email comments we got over the last 24 hours, because those did not get into the packet. It's not like we're going to start on the survey tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination. But it would be good at some point in the very near future to get some finality so that we can determine what our steps are moving forward, and then basically be able to give answers to some of the property owners that have those questions. I don't know if the city has a different viewpoint.
Yeah, I would just echo Jody's thoughts. And from the city's viewpoint, I guess, not to throw a complete wrench in it, Jody, but we would really want to see commissioner support around a connection, to be able to put finality to that there will be a connection. We recognize that it is a county road, and where that connection takes place, if you guys want more time to, pursue that further with Jody to look into, going out towards Town Line Road or, going a different specific route, I think we're open to continuing to pursue those options with the county, and we'd absolutely work very closely with Jody and her team on that. We just want to ensure that the board would support the city and that there is a connection made, that we're not going to rely on Pinecone Road as the route.
Commissioner Persky.
Okay, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Mergen, are you referring to the map on page 185? Is that the one you're looking at?
Yes.
And Anna, I've been on the APO for 20 years, and we've been working on that beltway for decades. And it's very important that all the communities are participating and working together to have a plan, because generations to come are going to say, what were they thinking? Why did they do it this way? Because we know central Minnesota is going to continue to grow. Commissioners, if you take a look on page 185, where the purple line and the blue line come down together, there's a roundabout there in that location. There's a building there, and that building is there, and that was supposed to be the fifth leg of that roundabout. That road was supposed to come down into that spot, and that was the plan the APO had. But that building was allowed to be built in that location. We've got to be talking to each other and communicating about our long-range plans. We would never be in this situation had we not allowed that building to be built there. Now, that being said, we're looking for an alternative. Yes, we need a beltway. We need something that makes sense, because bringing the traffic through, especially down Pinecone, is terrible. And I would agree that, yeah, maybe the alternative A, coming to 5 Points, would be a better alternative. But already next year, we've got a roundabout going in that location.
Right, but there's no buildings. You can
No,
make that
but what I'm
connection.
saying is that now would be the time to make sure, before that construction takes place, rather than put a four-leg roundabout in, to make sure that we're not going to go ahead with this plan and say, well, we're going to do that. So if this is a relatively good plan to actually do that, and I don't know how much you folks are in opposition to it, it's going to be more costly. There's wetlands there. And working around those wetlands is going to be difficult, because we'll need to buy the credits or whatever. But I would agree with the other two commissioners that that red line does look better. However, if we don't go that route, then I do support the one that you're proposing.
Yeah, I would agree with your thoughts. I think from a city standpoint, again, I just echo that we would just want to make sure a connection is made, and that the commissioners would support that today, just to ensure that we put finality to that aspect. But I would echo your comments around the Beltway being important, and I actually would even, because we know Northern Meadows is going there, and we also know the importance of Town Line Road and continuing lobbying efforts for funding for that road, I actually think from a city perspective, and we did discuss this as a council, if we're looking at that red line, it probably would make more sense to take 2nd Street, County Road 133 straight out to Town Line, and then go take Town Line down to the leg of the roundabout, and use that as the route, and knowing that Northern Meadows is planned, so you wouldn't cut through Northern Meadows. You just go straight to Town Line. I think it helps increase the importance of Town Line Road in our lobbying efforts in trying to achieve more funding for that road, if you're now connecting traffic that is coming from Highway 10 and Highway 15 truck traffic as that Beltway road. So that was a concept that we had discussed as a council, that if obviously it's a county road, and that will significantly increase the cost of the project, and we don't want to suggest that for the county, and we know that that's something that you have to consider. But if you're looking at that red route, it likely would make the most sense to go straight out to Town Line Road, and just further increase the need for Town Line Road to be an improved roadway.
Commissioner Clark.
So I've started thinking that I'm not going to think about this as a Beltway project anymore. This is a congestion alleviation project, because I think it was really helpful, Jody, when you brought up about we're having to deal with an existing bridge. I brought it up before, it really should be further north to be a Beltway. I'd hate to have Sartell deal with everything St. Cloud's been dealing with for a very long time, or exacerbated what you are. Having said that, there's not going to be a new bridge up there anytime sooner. It would have to go so far away that that's also problematic. So from an alleviation of congestion, I'm not sure we even have the right response right now, but I agree about us trying to find a way to have this impact the least amount of people and development. It sounds like the wetlands can be dealt with, but it's going to be expensive, and we just need to be aware of that.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clark, part of the issue with the type of planning funds we used is we cannot do a full-blown environmental study. We can do planning level environmental work, and so to get the answer on the wetlands, you basically need to do a full environmental study and get those answers from all of the regulatory agencies as to, yes, you can build through them. Of course, we know we have to mitigate if we do build through them, and what type of permits we would need to do that. So perhaps I did leave out an option for our next step, and that would be that full environmental study that would look at this, and it would be a little bit more extensive. And to get to that point, we would need to do preliminary design, very preliminary design on a couple of options, and then we would need to engage all of the permitting agencies before we would move forward with a specific option.
Commissioner Persky?
And I want to ask you about your question about Town Line Road. Then would Town Line Road come into 133 as a, would it be a stop sign, or how would that merge? Or April, I don't know if you could answer that question or not.
Well, I would.
Or you or Jody, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If we want this to be the through route that's going to take traffic to Highway 10, we're going to have to figure out the best way to have that that intersection control, because if it becomes a road that's a difficult left turn lane, we will build it, but no one will come. And so people will continue to use the 6th Street South alignment over to Pine Cone Road, because that would be the easiest. So if we want this to alleviate some of the traffic issues, we would need to make sure this is the easiest route to take. Yeah. Even if it's not, it doesn't always have to be the most direct, but it needs to be the easiest route to get you from point A to point B.
And, sorry, to build out, I would echo her thoughts of making sure that that intersection is smooth and easiest, and then also just to, as you're aware, add into the conversation, at the corner of County Road 4 and Town Line Road, there is actually city property. It's the compost site, and so it would allow us a little bit of navigation to be able to work around what that intersection would potentially look like, just being that we own that property. My Public Works Director is probably cringing behind me right now, but.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Clark?
Follow up. I just want to make sure I heard you right, Jody. Is a concern that you have with the red one is, will people actually use it? Can it be, do you believe it can be done in a way that people will use it?
I would think
if the environmental works,
if the environmental works out, if we use the red as is and perhaps had, and I know that there are other issues with that, but if we can make it intersect, whether it be with 4 County Road 133 at some place where that is the easiest route, then yes, I think people would use it to avoid that traffic. What we heard at that initial focus group meeting, because we had a wider group of property owners, because the whole area was open, and we heard from a lot of people who either have farm equipment or drive large trucks, that the Heritage Drive, Pine Cone Road roundabout does not work right now. It backs up certain times of the day. I've been there during the afternoon peak, about 17 cars back on Heritage, so I do know it does back up. But so you just need to make sure that whatever you build is an easier route than 6th Street South alignment and Pine Cone Road. So that's the primary thing. So if we have that intersection where Town Line Road and County Road 4 currently intersect, and then you have a left, because that's too close to have two roundabouts. I don't know that we would want to incorporate a four-way stop there. It's potential, because if there's that much more traffic, we could look at that. But so then you'll have a couple of turns in there, and so I don't know if we use that intersection to the north of where the current Forward 133 intersection is, that people would necessarily choose to take that route, unless the other road was load posted or something to that effect.
Mr. Chair.
Well, what Commissioner Persky talked about, that roundabout by 4 there, couldn't that be constructed to leave an exit, a possible exit for future expansion?
Absolutely.
That was actually going to be the comment that I shared, is that ideally if you could direct it into that roundabout somehow, I think that would be the easiest. But again, we didn't necessarily look at that route as a part of this study. I think from the city perspective, we just want to make sure that the commissioners are supportive of a connection, and then it sounds like there's environmental and surveying that would need to be done to look into some of these further routes. But we just want to make sure we're all on the same page, to your point, and are talking that it is incredibly crucial for our community and for congestion and traffic flow that Pinecone is not used as the main route and that a connection is made. And we would absolutely support further discussion and exploration into that beltway going further out. We know what development is doing in Sartell. We know it's continuing to grow. So I think the city could absolutely get behind going more of that red route and trying to get out to that other roundabout, especially if it would impact less property owners. We want to be respectful of the budget, of course.
So basically, I think we're all in concurrence that something needs to be done, but again, is C or D the right answer at this point? Maybe not. I mean, maybe it is, going with the environmental. Commissioner Linsmeyer?
Take some solace in the notion that there is no right answer on issues like this, because the goals of the players are so different. The city is much more concerned about, in every case like this, the city is much more concerned about neighborhood to neighborhood traffic. The county is much more interested in community to community traffic. And the state is much more interested in city to city and even regional to region traffic. So the idea that it's an adventure to get to a right answer isn't particularly surprising. Whatever we decide will be viewed by the different players as favoring one jurisdiction over another, even though that's not our starting point. So in some respects, what we're attempting to do is impossible, but what the hell, somebody has to make these decisions, so here we are.
So we could basically be in support of doing something, but maybe the next step is spending money to do the environmental. Jody? Or
I was just looking at the wording of the resolution. It says the study findings will assist the county and local officials to cooperatively improve the county system. But study findings do come out with alternative C. So if the board is not comfortable with alternative C, I think that I would ask, knowing the city would like to know that the board is in favor of, if there'd be a motion and it would pass, that the board would be in favor of moving forward with some sort of connection between Tyson Road and whether it be, well, you can just say County Road 4, because even if it connects at 19th, That's between Tyson Road and County Road 4. So,
Well, would it help to start eliminating possibilities? Is that progress? What's your thought? Because I'm ready to make a motion here just to say, well, we looked at this and it didn't work, so we have to do something else. What do you want?
Well, C and D are in play right now, so if we go with Jody's thought and just go with the resolution and support, but not determining the route, I could live with that.
I could too, especially if there's going to be an environmental review, because it does seem like at least most of us, and maybe all of us, would like to see something that looks a lot closer to A if it's workable. And if people would use it. I mean, I think those are, to me, the two main criteria here.
Well, and I seen that it says sold on that roundabout on 19th, so if that fills up with houses and they're going east, they're gonna still shoot over to Pinecone and over to Heritage if they're gonna get out of town. So I don't think you're gonna see much traffic alleviated in that section of the road in the future, but
if we did alternative C, that 6th Street South alignment would come into the alternative C, so they would have to get onto the 133 through that roundabout at 19th. And then if, depending which direction they're going, they may separate and take the 6th Street alignment, or they may head towards Highway 10 via our newly constructed County Road 133, if alternative C were built. And I don't mean to, I certainly don't want the board to sit and go through a process of elimination today. I know I'm already over my time. So if it's just supporting that, yes, something does need to be done. If you're not comfortable with the resolution, but want to support something being done, just a motion, that would work as well. I'm comfortable with either.
So what would be a solution? We got to keep this moving, okay? So what solution or what motion would provide you the flexibility to keep this going rather than coming up with a no action type of situation? Share that, would you?
I think a motion that the board supports making a connection between Tyson Road and County Road 4 and directing staff to further, continue the environmental and engineering investigations that need to be that need to be done to determine the best route.
I agree.
I'll make that motion as Jody stated it.
What?
I'll make the motion as Jody stated it.
All righty, I would too. I'll second that.
okay. Any other further discussion?
Yes. Can the city live with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we didn't accomplish much, but we made some progress. How's that?
Thank you for your time.
Okay, any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Yeah.
I don't have any miscellaneous for you unless anyone on the board has anything.
Anybody have anything for Jody? I guess not.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you,
assuming
Jody.
we're
That was
due for a
easy.
break. Corey, is that okay? We're going to take a break quick. All right. Take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right, we'll resume our board meeting. Next item is Veteran Services.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thank you. Good to see you all again. I'm Corey Vasky. I'm the Stearns County Veteran Service Officer. I've been with the county now for about 7 years. I do an annual report, and this is what I'm hoping to give you today. Just to review our 2021 numbers, I do have some statistics and a report that was included in the board packet. As you can see in the accompanying documents found in the board packet, we conducted 1,645 scheduled interactions, which is down from 2020 which was about 1,884 in 2020. I attribute this to staffing disruptions throughout 2021. We had a series of retirements beginning at the end of 2020 and continuing all the way to July of this year. We had one of the first retiree, we hired their replacement in December of 2020. That person ended up resigning in May of 2021. It takes some time to hire a replacement, which was hired in August, and it takes time to train in those VSOs. There isn't any training other than on-the-job training for veteran service officers, so it takes some time to get them trained in. That person, once they just started really contributing to our workload in December, we had another retirement in December of 2021, which set us back. So when you account for the amount of time we were short-staffed as well as training in new VSOs, we were actually essentially down a VSO for 10 months in 2021, which is why I believe some of our numbers are down. In spite of staffing shortages throughout 2021, our claim submittals increased actually from 1,545 in 2020 to 1,661 in 2021. When we adjust, just for comparison, when we adjust for the claim types, this isn't a number I put in previous reports, but when I look back at 2019, and then compare for adjusted claim types, we submitted about 1,070 claims in 2019 compared to 1,047 claims in 2021. So, and that was really, prior to 2021, that was a number that I was just tracking internally for the claim types that we do predominantly, such as compensation claims, VA pension claims, and state grant submittals. So taking into consideration, even with the reduced staff, the number of claims types is very comparable to pre-COVID-19 pandemics. Of note, in the fall of 2020, we did implement a new program that allows us to more closely track interactions and claim types generated called VetPro. In 2021, we had 8,271 documented interactions with the VA, with veterans. These include appointments, us checking status on claims, making notes on things. Of those interactions, we generated 3,266 forms and created what we call 1,853 claims actions, so something we did. And I want to make note that the difference between the number of claims actions we created in the program and the actual number of submittals. So the submittals was 1,661 versus 1,853 actions. So what we're seeing, there's some disconnected, some data, differences there, but a lot of it is stuff that we're sitting down with clients, generating work product and setting it up front for them to come in and sign the documents, or we're mailing it out for signature and that stuff isn't coming back. So I thought this was important with the program that we have now. I can kind of reflect back on that and consider, hey, we're doing this. This isn't being captured in our numbers, but we are actually producing work, which just may not result in an actual submittal for whatever reason. Currently, our office continues to push through the last part of our staffing changeover. We hired a new VSO in April of this year and again in November. The new VSO that we hired in April was deployed on short notice in September. At that time, because of the retirement at the end of July, we were down 2 VSOs and had to reschedule that VSO's appointments. And very shortly in September, we were a month and a half out for availability for a scheduled appointment. And that peaked in October. It was 2 months for a scheduled appointment availability for us. That has come back down. We're currently our next available is January 27th. We've done basically everything I can think of to mitigate that availability. We brought in through the State Department of Veterans Affairs has an outreach program, and we brought in one of their VSOs a couple days a week to help meet with some of our veterans in Stearns County. We worked with administration. We brought in a temp, one of the prior VSOs that had retired. We brought him back as a temp VSO, and he's handling all of our walk-ins now, freeing up some time. We were able to open up some appointment times available to veterans. And then in the meantime, we did hire a new VSO at the beginning of November, are in the process of training that person in and hoping that come January, we can start getting them into seeing clients regularly, and that will open up some appointment times as well in January. That being said, we are doing walk-ins, which is a good thing, but it's also what we're seeing now is because we're so far out is a lot of people are trying to come in during walk-ins for things that really take, an hour or more to sit down and work with them. We're doing the best that we can. We're triaging the situations as they come up. When time-sensitive issues come up, we are making time available, but that's coming at the expense of returning phone calls timely or emails or putting together packets, sometimes triaging the paperwork that we're doing because we're taking time away from doing that in order to meet with clients and assist them with their needs. So everything we do now, any changes that we make is displacing something else that we're doing, but I'm hopeful in the next few months we will start to normalize again as the new VSO gets up to speed and the currently deployed VSO comes back later this or early spring. This past August, the board was presented with results of an office study. There were 11 recommendations made that were specific recommendations. There were also some indirect suggestions, such as expanding our staff or waiting area. Of those 11, we have worked on some of those have been completed, such as reopening walk-ins. Some of them, there's a plan in place, such as I believe our budget was amended to pursue 2 part-time staff. One is a part-time veteran service officer, the other is a part-time front-end office specialist. And there are some others where we're continuing to work with. It was suggestions like continue to work with other departments in assisting veterans and with benefits. Last, state and local and national issues continue to influence the activities of our office. In August of this year, there was historic legislation known as the PACT Act that was passed. This legislation included 23 new presumptive conditions associated with burn pit exposure. It also included 2 new conditions associated with Agent Orange exposure and expanded the areas of presumptive Agent Orange exposure. There are many other things that were included in the PACT Act that don't necessarily affect our office other than discussions with veterans to include there's some requirements on the VA for environmental toxic exposure studies and different things that veterans are getting calls on but don't necessarily directly affect our office. Some of those other changes to the presumptive conditions, they do and are affecting our office. We've seen a significant increase in inquiries regarding these PACT Act exposures. Probably the biggest is the hypertension was added in relation to Agent Orange exposure. We're getting a lot of Vietnam veterans that are calling us and scheduling appointments to submit claims related to hypertension. Additionally, more recently serving veterans, Gulf War vets that are inquiring about nasal and lung conditions associated with burn pit exposures. Kind of on a local note here, talk a little bit about the St. Cloud VAMC. I don't think it's news to anyone. Most medical providers out there are struggling with staffing. The St. Cloud VA is struggling with staffing. They're aware of it. They've been very proactive at trying to address that issue. However, these staffing issues and the ongoing COVID-19 policies that they have in place are affecting their ability to serve veterans in key areas to include inpatient mental health care, as well as their community living center or their long-term care availability. St. Cloud VA is known for their RRTP, or Residential Rehabilitation and Treatment Program. We get people from all over the Midwest that come to that program. The CLC, or the Community Living Center, is one of the largest in the country, and they attract people from all over. However, basically since 2020, they're following the CDC guidelines for community transmission, and as long as transmission is high, they are prohibited from bringing in people from or admitting people from within the community. This has had a pretty significant impact on veterans who meet the disability criteria, who need that care, and are unable to get into the VA or into contracted care locally. So that is something that's been raised to them. We are working, we've had conversations with the VA, we've had conversations with other folks, legislatures and so forth. There isn't a lot of traction on this issue, but it is something we'll continue to advocate for, or I will in my role. To conclude, our office remains very busy. We are trying to provide a broad spectrum of assistance to many veterans and their families. I'm hopeful that as staffing starts to normalize over the next few months, we will begin to resume our regular outreach activities in Albany, Holding Ford, and Painesville. We will again have a VSO in Western Stearns County, and we will resume activities such as the quarterly newsletter, participation in Veterans Protocol, and others. Thank you. Any questions?
You know, it's almost a shame when you hear that, you know, because of certain protocols, you know, you have the, excuse me, the capabilities, but, you know, because of protocols, you can't, you know, take care of these individuals. I mean, that's, you know, even when you mention like your appointment times, I don't know how many are like new appointments or people coming in to maybe discuss changing their benefits.
Like our availability in our office?
Yes.
You know, I haven't tracked that necessarily. Okay. I could go back and look at, say, and determine how many new appointments in the month of, you know, November, or looking at that previously. But so I could get that number to you in the future if that's something.
No, it just seems kind of a shame that, you know, people that go out there and serve the country and stuff like that get put in this position where they can't even be priority taken care of, you know, because of staffing issues and whatnot.
Well, we are telling people, this is how we're using our walk-in time, is we're telling them, you know, we come into our office during walk-ins, initiate that conversation. We can do a screening at that time to determine, you know, what is it that you're looking for. Sometimes we're doing what's called an intent to file to hold the effective date of a claim. And then we're saying, okay, I know it's a month out, but you do have some stuff that we might want to file a claim for, so let's schedule the appointment, come back, at least we have the date protected.
Yeah, and I'm not kind of pointing at the local office, it's just I know you guys have chain of command, you know, steps you have to do to, you know, get the process going and completed, so.
Yeah.
You know, some of that's beyond the local control.
So. A lot of it is, and I will give the VA this, like if you're referring to some of the issues with VAMC, it's not even in their control. Yeah, the St. Cloud VA is following a national protocol, and that they don't have a choice, you know, and so they're working. They've been very receptive to work within what they think they have the power to do. So, so I'm hopeful, you know, that continues, but it does limit what we can do, and that kind of falls along a national trend in all things VA, which is they are consolidating and taking away autonomy from regional, you know, or local you know, this like the St. Cloud VA or the St. Paul Regional Office. We see consolidation of responsibility up the chain, so to speak, and less autonomy at the local levels.
Commissioner Murray.
Yeah, a couple things. Corey mentioned the staffing shortage at the VA, and just in my own situation, I do all my medical out there. And for years, I've had my annual physical in August. And because of staffing shortages this year, it's going to be in January now. So it's pushed back quite a bit. And the second thing is I want to thank Corey again for time he spent with us yesterday concerning a military death in the family that occurred about 60 years ago, and starting an investigation as to looking at the circumstances involving it. So he spent about an hour and a half with the family yesterday.
Wow.
So, thanks, Corey.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, two thoughts. One is it's really pretty frustrating that our local VAMC is tied with what they can do when there's a best practice, but it can't apply to the people locally. And it really shouldn't matter. So whatever we can do to, you know, kind of add our own voices in. I know you'll let us know, and I know NACO keeps looking at that, which is a good thing, as does yours. And then I think the other piece that you've brought up with on those Friday on the office, kind of the walk-ins, being able to preserve those dates, and then people can at least start getting going. It's really important. We see that with MA applications and lots of other things too. So it sounds like you're being pretty creative and client-focused on how to juggle this in a way that's going to still make a difference for them, recognizing the challenges that you've got just from how far out appointments are.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would say that we are trying to prioritize the interests of the veteran and maximize the benefits available to them, or the claimant. Might not be the veteran. And it's a give and take and a balance, and we're trying to fight. Like, it's been a struggle for us. My preference, Commissioner, is to spend the amount of time needed to be effective and positively influence the outcome. And what we're limited in is time, and so that'll change, that'll get better, but in the short term here, it's been a challenge.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate the report.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Commissioner Lensmeyer, do you have a comment?
Yeah, the first time I heard the terminology of how each conflict has a signature wound was a Veteran Services report. And I learned of two more in Corey's report, making the point that Vietnam veterans are coming in now with, you said PTSD, and what else did you say?
Hypertension, I think, is what I said.
Yeah, and whereas the Gulf War veterans are coming in with respiratory issues.
Correct.
The other conflicts have other common wounds. And some of that is actually driven by technology. We keep coming up with new ways to kill people, which is really what happens, and sometimes it results in unique results. And I'm listening to Jeff's comments here. You're able to investigate something that happened 60 years ago?
Well, we're starting. I don't want to discuss too much of their situation, but I think starting to try to figure out where records might exist and how, yes, it depends, and what the outcome might be. We're not sure necessarily, but.
There's no clue as to what they'll find.
Wow, that's impressive. And I also realize that the function of Veteran Services officers, especially the volume of cases that they handle, varies substantially by geography. It turns out that Stearns County, if you're going to measure the caseload that Corey has, and just using population of the county as a statistic, Stearns County is really an outlier compared to adjacent counties with somewhat, or nearby counties with somewhat similar populations. And it's driven by the fact that we're in a location with a VA hospital, and it's easier for these folks to interact with the system here in Stearns County than it is to go back to wherever they came from. So we do get a disproportionate number of folks compared to other jurisdictions our size. But I don't hear I just don't hear issues with service despite that disparity. I'm having a somewhat similar experience myself with the IRS in terms of how do you get in to discuss certain aspects of your own situation. So there are some remarkable similarities there, but yeah, I'm glad we got you. If you want, I can give you a short story of how Corey got here.
I think you did that last week.
Heard it.
Huh?
We've heard it. You've told it to
The
us.
punchline is, it came down to Corey, or a West Point graduate. And Corey was in service, was an NCO, non-commissioned officer. And there are holdovers mentally from military service, and there are enlisted persons that are dubious of the opinions of officers. And we picked Corey just because of that.
Well, I appreciate your confidence in me. I've been here now for 7 years, so I hope I continue to meet your expectations for several years longer. But thank you.
Yeah, that's why you're here.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
Okay, next up is administration. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's 4 items under administration, and if the board would allow me, I would also like to give a quick update on our broadband project, because it sounds like the state's going to move pretty quickly into the next border-to-border application round, so I want to bring the board up to date on that. But the first item is to consider a change in our public access forum. And as you all know, but I sometimes think that some members of the public don't quite understand, is that the public access forum is not something that is required by any law. It's something that many boards and councils throughout the country actually do, but it's not a requirement. And but having said that, I think it's a best practice, and I think that we want to allow that public access at some time during our board meetings. And so, but I feel like we wanted to put a few more parameters around that, so both the public knows what to expect and the board knows what to expect when someone wants to address the board on something that's not on the agenda. And so what's before you, and I apologize, it wasn't in the copy wasn't in the packet. I think you've seen a rough draft of it, but this is more of the final draft. But as I said, it's not huge changes, but it does put some additional parameters, and it changes the time. So what's being suggested here is that we would actually have the open forum, anytime the board's together, it's going to be a board meeting, but actually before the business meeting starts, so at 8:45. And then we would limit the number of people that can speak to 5, which is typically, we haven't had more than that anyway, and do the same 2 or 3 minute requirement. And we would encourage people to pre-register before the meeting so we know how many, and so that we can give preference to Stearns County residents, or as I've been suggested, we can say residents and property owners as well, and I'd be fine with that. But that's really pretty much it, and so it wouldn't be a part of the regular business meeting. It would everybody would know it's going to begin at 8:45. It's going to conclude at 9, and then we would start our business meeting. So I don't think huge change. I don't think it's going to be difficult for the public to use that. It's just a little different, a little more parameters, a little more time constraints. Because as you know, when we have business to do, there's often public hearings and things like that, and we really need to preserve that business meeting time so that the board can conduct the public's business.
Okay, and I'll just mention Sauk River Watershed switched to this probably a year and a half ago. They do a similar thing. Their meeting starts at 6 in the evening, and 5:45, basically they have a public open comment period where individuals, tied to the watershed, anybody can come in and comment on any item, but same thing, 6 o'clock, okay, now we'll go into our business meeting. So, like I said, that group switched to this format too. Basically just, I think it's the same thing, just because it gets away from them, and then they end up staying late. So, Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, Mike, I agree with much of what you're saying. One thing that might help is with that sign up, if you could then hand it to the chair as we start the public forum. Reason being, if we have one person that's going to be speaking, they have 15 minutes. If we give them 6 minutes, that's not an issue. But if we've got 5 or 6 people, and the couple people at the beginning are using a little bit excess time, we're going to run in, and I don't know how close to 9 o'clock we actually want to be starting our meeting, but that way we, the chair can then regulate, we've got 2 more people to hear from, there's 5 more people speaking, or even let the person ramble if it's just them and they feel like they've got the gift of babble.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, we would, and that's encouraging people to register beforehand and giving them preference should allow us to have a pretty good idea who's going to be presenting. And if they don't sign up and there's 5 there, they're probably not going to get a chance to speak. So hopefully we get people so we know who's coming.
Sure.
Anybody else? Commissioner Clark, did you have a comment?
No, I was thinking this might help with us being able to stay more on time for people who are coming in to present or that are looking for a public hearing and yet preserve the opportunity for people to be coming in. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and letting people know that, look, we're going to have this time frame might help them with preparing what they want to be saying. I was thinking about how we definitely have also had a little seep into people getting up, trying to say things that are actually on the agenda. So we just have to keep reminding them, and maybe whoever's helping them sign in would be, because we're not turning everything into, it's not a town hall and it's not everything's a public hearing. So I would I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
What about,
discussion?
it says
Commissioner Mergen?
where the public forum portion of the board meeting will not be recorded, live streamed, or broadcast. There may be other people that they might be hitting issues that other people want to hear about too. I don't know why you wouldn't live stream it.
Yes.
Well, we wouldn't have started the meeting yet, and that's actually something that's a pretty common practice, is if somebody's wanting to come to speak to the board versus speaking to the universe, they're coming to speak to the board. Otherwise, they've got other ways to go speak to the universe.
I mean, they've always, public hearing it, or public forum's always been live streamed. I don't know why you'd take that out.
But a number of them aren't. I mean, like the city of St. Cloud doesn't do that. A lot of other ones don't. So.
Ours have always been live streamed.
Right, but right now I think we're trying to figure out what's a balance, because at least some seem to be trying to utilize the time for other purposes than speaking to the board about things that might come before the board. So.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know how crucial that would be. It's just a matter of, if we do it, then staff would have to probably make sure they had everything up earlier.
Yeah, that's the only part I would object to in there is that seems like going backwards to me.
Well, maybe we'll learn something. If it doesn't work,
right, we can always
we can always go back. We can always modify
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Like we're going to
Absolutely,
get
yeah, it's your
stuff,
policy.
it's just like the transportation issue we had this morning. We're going to get this right the first time. Well, we better take a victory lap now for that good.
But Mr. Chair, I think I would agree with Commissioner Clark. That's why we did it this way, was we want people to come in and talk to you, to the board, not to the general public.
Right, it's not a town hall.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I guess one thing
Commissioner Persky?
also, just for the public that's watching now, they do have the option also of communicating with us by email. We all are getting our emails.
Yeah.
We have our phone numbers available. And so this is not their only opportunity to approach the board. So, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the change, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Mr. Hammes is going to lead us through the next 2 items, I believe.
Good morning, Mr. Chair,
And
Commissioners.
1 and 2. Good.
I'm Steve Hammes. I'm the Assistant Administrator for the county, and we're here today to talk about the Capital Improvement Plan project list and the update for the year. And our back staff are getting the presentation pulled up. I'm going to have our administrative intern, Lauren Idam, go through the first part of it. Close? Close. Close, okay.
Good Good morning.
Good morning. Lauren Idom, County Administration Intern. I'm going to go over the first part of the capital improvement plan for 2023 to 2027. So I'm starting off with an overview of what we'll go over today. So I'll start with an introduction on what a capital improvement plan is for the public, how we utilize that. Then we'll go into goals, and that talks about bonds and minimizing the impact to the budget. And then I'll pass it back to Steve, and he can go over the breakdown of the projects and the financial aspect of those, the funding. And we'll end with a little timeline just on how these projects are going to get into motion. So moving into what is a capital improvement plan. So it's a project management tool that plans out the next 5 years and helps the county identify and communicate long-term capital needs to the public. This can be achieved by determining which facilities need maintenance, whether that means repurposing the building or upgrading current utilities to increase efficiency, preserving the investment and extending longevity of capital. Can also help identify when and where to develop new properties or facilities, as well as the best way to finance these projects. So how Stearns County uses capital improvement projects. Firstly, through maximizing efficiency. So we want to ensure that every facility is utilizing its full capacity, and that protects the integrity of county capital, as well as making sure that we're getting the full life expectancy out of all of our capital. And that goes into maintenance. We want to make sure that all of our facilities are adequately maintained. And that's something that Steve will go into today, as 2 of our 3 projects are going to be maintenance projects for this capital improvement plan. So the third is financing. So we can systematically determine how to best finance each project, and that is evaluating what funds are available to us already, or if we need to take out bonding dollars to complete these projects. And then finally, our capital improvement plans help us support goals. We want to ensure that we're doing our due diligence to treat our capital with the utmost care and provide a well-maintained community for the public. So our goals for our 2023 to 27 capital improvement plan would be making sure that we're issuing bonds at the lowest interest rate. That way we can reduce the amount of funds lost to interest. And fortunately, Stearns County will only have 1 bond left that we're paying on at the end of this year. So we're at kind of a prime point to take on more debt. And then the second goal would be minimizing the impact of the projects on the budget. We want to keep the levy low for our taxpayers. So that's what I have for you today. I'll pass it over to Steve, and he can go over the major upcoming projects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. As we know, at the last board meeting, you had a workshop where you talked about the options available to us on the largest project that's been around, which is the Criminal Justice Center. I just wanted to highlight that for the overall, these are all projects on the first 2 columns that have already been approved by the board in past years. So again, depending on what decisions the board makes in regards to the Criminal Justice Center, that then will need to be revisions and remodels to this building and the possible removal of the ring road that, again, the board has already authorized. Looking at parks projects that are already in the works, we're again working on the Beaver Island Trail, implementing development of the Wildwood Park, and having money set aside for any grant opportunities that come up to establish the county's match. In terms of the projects that we're going to talk about that are new, they are looking at a Western Service Center and 2 projects for the highway shop in Waite Park. So first, the infrastructure project, looking at a Western Service Center HHW facility. In the past, this has been approved by the board as an expansion of the existing household hazardous waste facility in Waite Park. As you know, the county had a location that we rented in the Melrose School District as a service site for departments to have a site for the public to come in to get services, be it from veteran services, environmental, or others. And the school district out there wanted that space back, and so that site was closed during COVID. And so since then, we have been having our facilities department work with all of the departments in the county to see what kind of long-term space needs do we have for a new site in the western half of the county, and we are anticipating having something in the Melrose area in the next couple of years. We are hoping that we can dovetail this with the Household Hazardous Waste Center wanting to expand their services and have a location that would both meet having household hazardous waste out in the west end of the county, as well as having space for other departments, kill as many birds with one stone as possible, and do it through mostly using the solid waste dollars so that it won't really be an impact on the levy. The other projects are maintenance projects. As Lauren indicated, these are both for the highway shop in Waite Park. One is a replacement of the salt dome that's out there. That salt dome, I think, was built right about the time I started with the county, right around 2000, and the building is in desperate need of being replaced. And so that's going to be about $1.5 million to do that replacement. And then the highway shop in Waite Park is about our oldest infrastructure building that we have for the county in the metro area. And that was built in the early 80s, and the HVAC system there is on its last legs, and that will need to be replaced to about the tune of $500,000. Again, we are hoping that we can do all three of these projects, not having to bond anything, using, again, fund balance or project fund dollars to take care of this, so that we can preserve the board's ability to save bonding dollars for whatever decisions, again, you decide to do on the Criminal Justice Center. So the timeline, again, is, today I'm only asking for a motion by the board to approve adding these three projects, the Western Service Center, the Salt Dome replacement, and the HVAC system for Highway in Waite Park to the CIP project list so that staff can start creating their scope of work and working with architects and things to help plan those projects. Then next year, again, after the board has had more time to deliberate the Criminal Justice Center and make decisions on what you're doing there, we'll come back, administration and the auditor's office, to have the formal CIP plan adopted, which will include the financing piece. And then, again, at the very earliest, again, depending on what happens with the board's decisions on how to fund a Criminal Justice Center and what actions we want to take there, we'll come back at the end of 23 or in 2024 to talk about bonding. Is there any questions regarding any of the projects? I have staff here from departments that can help answer those if needed.
Any questions for Steve? Commissioner Persky?
Steve, you're talking about a west side household hazardous waste location?
Yes.
You know, since I've been on the board, I've been quite concerned about, our availability for that, for people to use that. I think we're open a half a day, one Saturday throughout the month. And I've looked at other counties, Dakota County, Washington County, Anoka County, counties that service, a good number of people just like we do, and we fail to make that available. So I don't know about adding another place unless we're going to make what we have even more available or at least accessible. We do offer the service for Benton County, Morrison County, Sherburne County, and I will tell you, by the major shopping centers in St. Cloud, people come to St. Cloud on Saturday. And between the hours of 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, they don't seem to draw as much as they do when it's, off working hours. So I would hesitate putting in a new plant or a new facility unless we're showing that we really want to utilize the one we have. I'm very strongly in that opinion because I think we're here to serve the public, and I don't know if we're necessarily meeting that need right now. Those dollars, when you come through Home Depot or Menards or wherever you buy your paint, you pay a sales tax, but you also pay a recycling charge, and those dollars come back to serve the public. And people I know who probably have paint sitting in their basement, paint sitting in their garage.
Oh, everybody did.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't know if we're doing our best to actually draw that stuff out because it sits, they've got good intentions. Yeah, I'll bring it in, I'll bring it in. Finally, it goes into the trash can that gets picked up every week.
Or if you're like us, you think you might have to repaint or fix a spot, so you keep the paint.
Right, you do.
But then after about 15 years, it's like, oh,
until you
shoot,
change color, and then it's not
we just
bad.
went through that this weekend.
Right,
It's like,
absolutely. And I think there's a number of ways we can, and just an idea, again, I've talked about county fairs. Bring your paint to the county fair. We could do 187 counties could be doing all that, and we could bring a lot of waste back in. If we're going to do this right, we've got to make it convenient to people. So I'm on my soapbox today.
I understand your concerns, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, and again, this is just to let us start working on the project. I would anticipate that as part of developing a project scope, there would be a staffing plan attached to that. And I think that would hope to answer your questions. I know Shelley's in the room if she has anything she wants to add.
Yeah. And, you know, if it's by, let's say even Sauk Center and by the highway garage, you know, that somebody's always around, you know, would help too. But that, to be determined, I guess, where this is just the start. But Commissioner
But
Murray?
just to piggyback on what Joe was talking about, maybe rather than Saturdays 4 hours and call it overtime, instead do some sort of study, say where during the week is 4 hours that are least used, and just do a trade-off. Something like that, where it wouldn't cost extra money or anything.
Yeah.
But
Or you
I could
rotate
see
staff.
Saturdays when people aren't working, they would probably do that, more so than during the week.
Commissioner Lensmeyer?
Would this be an appropriate topic to bring up League of Stearns County Cities, to ask the cities if they could, if it'd be possible to be a, should we call it an interim collection site, to make it more convenient? It isn't just about hours, it's also about location, you know? Nobody from Sauk Center is going to come in, you know, to drop this stuff off in Wade Park. Maybe we're missing the point completely. Ask the larger of the small cities to have some sort of a collection in one of their buildings. And what our folks could do is have a route system that maybe monthly or quarterly they could do pickups in the small cities. Maybe there wouldn't be anything at some of these locations, so our person could call ahead and, you know, at City Hall, what do you got, you know? And maybe they wouldn't have to stop at every smaller city. So I think we're looking at this backwards.
Commissioner Clark?
Well, I guess my observation would be as a policy governance board that we're into what's and why's, not how. And the what is we want people to be able to access this in places in ways that meet their needs, and the why is because we want it to be actually useful. But us figuring out what staff will figure out is a little beyond probably our scope. But certainly very much agree that we want to be able to be much more accessible, and hopefully you're hearing some ideas. Just to help move us along, I'll move adding these 3 into our SIP line. Is that what
Yeah,
the
CIP,
project
yep.
list?
Okay. Are we looking for a motion to
I just moved it.
adopt? Did you? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Clark. Do we have a second?
Well, I'll second it.
Okay,
but,
second by
we'll be
Commissioner
talking
Lensmeyer.
about this more in the future.
Oh, I'm sure it'll come back to us, so.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. The next board item is Commissioner salaries. In your blue folders, you saw that I had put in there all of the information that is typically there, including your history of the past 30 years of commissioner salaries, a table showing what possible increases would be based on percentages. Micah did a very quick board salary survey yesterday of Micah board salaries, and so that's also in your packet since they sent it out as well.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Mr. Hammes on this?
I do, although I've gotten to talk to Mr. Hammes about this. I guess I think we're really going to need some kind of a comp study for us. If I look at counties that have anywhere near our population size and complexity, the commissioners' salaries are around $55,000 to $75,000. So we're kind of a massive outlier, and that's including some smaller than us. But yet, we don't really have a good way to be making decisions. And I know in many of those counties, they've had information and more of a suggestion or recommendation for administration. So I hope by next year we could actually have something like that, because it's almost, there's a reason why the legislature had a constitutional amendment about salaries for themselves and constitutional officers. It's a conflict of interest the opposite way. Nobody wants to be sitting out there trying to figure it out. So we need help. We need help. I hoped by this time this year we might have gotten, I know we've been busy with other things, and while it's not the most important thing to do this job the way I think some of us do, it takes a lot of time and a lot of learning and a lot of patience and a lot of meeting with folks, and we just don't have good information. We seem to sit here every year just kind of looking at each other like, what do we do now? So I don't know if you have any thoughts about any of that, but I'd be certainly interested.
Mr. Chair, I just want to share with the whole board again my conversation with Commissioner Clark. So one of the goals for next year is to re-examine the counties that we use for comparison purposes for salaries as well as other things. Again, we do this every time the census has been completed. I hadn't done it in 22 because we were in the middle of contract talks and wanted to let that cycle complete before redoing that. And so now that both that cycle is done and the census data is out, I was going to go back and recalibrate if there's any change needed in our comp counties, just as we've done in 2010 and in 2000. So we'll have that information during next year, and we can have more dialogue as well.
Inclusion,
we need more information than that, because what has been there, people knew 10 years ago weren't really comparisons. So we need some more guidance and help to figure this out. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think it should be all inclusive, with what the benefits amount to and everything. Just for
I agree.
Transparency, I think it should all be there. Commissioner Mergen, were you going to say something, or no?
I was waiting my turn, but yeah, as these salaries go up and up and up, my fear is that would create another tier of lifetime politicians, and I think if you're here for the money, you're here for the wrong reasons. That's always been my attitude. So, of course, you don't want to lose money doing it, but
yeah, that's
it.
Thought it was fairly well thought out.
Usually you're good for about 5 minutes.
No. I might break in again.
How about instead of this? If you have no more to add, because I've suffered through, it's 10th year, 10 of these.
12.
12? Okay. You've done 12? Okay. How about if we put you on the agenda and for this meeting next year, and you can go through it again. You don't even have to practice the speech. You've done it so often.
Should I send a recording?
Well, yeah, you could send in boy, you're getting Mr. Efficient here. Yeah, you could do, your annual observations about commissioner salaries, and we play the tape.
I do have one more thing to add. I talked to a commissioner from Morrison County about this very situation of having this done before you've set the levy, and he told me he would support that. I think Steve was there. Were you there when we talked about that?
And maybe Morrison would be the first county to do that.
Said he thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, well, we
There,
deal with it
something.
annually. We can.
I added something this year, Lee.
That was Muhammad Ali's favorite famous line: "You can run, but you can't hide." We can do it any way we want, but you now know how our public access forum works. Or if you, out of respect for your service, we could put you on the agenda, the last meeting of the year, and you can share your perspective at that time.
Sounds good.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Amos?
God, if you make the guilt trip bad enough, well, you're Roman Catholic, so am I. I think Joe is too.
No, it works on Missouri Synod too.
If you do it, if you do it properly, it saves us a trip to confession.
Mr. Chair, to help, I just want to point out that of all the counties, be it Micah or be it the counties that we've comped to ourselves, only Washington County so far has set their commissioner salaries this year. All other counties, both Micah or any of the surroundings or comps, are doing it either this meeting or if they have a meeting later this month.
I guess to open it up, maybe, I mean, I know we gave, the employees, the raise they have. I'd be open to doing just a 3%.
I'd be open to 5%.
Is that a motion? Which one's a motion? I don't know.
Well, I guess I was just making a comment.
Comment, okay.
I don't know if Commissioner Lenzmeyer is making his a motion, but,
I'll make that motion.
okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second it for
Okay.
discussion purposes and note that we'd be around where Candio High is.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjust the commissioner's salary by 5%. Any further discussion? Further comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh,
I'll
Commissioner
comment.
Persky?
I might as well get my 2 cents in with it. And I want to, first of all, I was going to save it for issues by commissioner, thanking Jeff for his years of service.
Yeah.
Let's do that then.
But we'll do that. But this is one, Jeff, that I think is worth knowing because you question, and I think all of us question, why we do it and the pay that we do it for. And I don't think anybody is here to do it for the pay. However, there is a thing about compensation, and there has to be something about the compensation in that there are those that it keeps away from them because they'd like to be doing the job, but they can't because they have other commitments to a job. The increase that we're looking at, we're at 39 to 40,000, and I look at where Candio High is, and I also take a look at, I see Crow Wing is at 32, and I see Otter Tail is at just around 42 as well. I don't think that that's necessarily out of line from where we've been. I think I've only voted for one pay increase since the time I've been on here because I've shared the similar views as Mr. Mergen. But yeah, I do think we can probably bring it up, and I would be supporting of the 5%.
Okay, any further discussion?
Just
Commissioner Clark?
at least for staff, as they look at this the next year, I agree about the benefits. Some still are doing per diem, some aren't. That impacts people. Some are doing in-county expenses, some don't. So there's an array of ways to look at this. I do personally, I mean, I was I worked with at-risk teenagers, and I was a legal aid attorney. I mean, I don't do things for the money, but I also know we really are an outlier when you look at where we are, and without some help of figuring out more objectively where we should be, I think we're just going to keep having this conversation. And one of the things I love about this board is how committed everybody is to the work that they do.
And another way you can also look at it is you could say, well, we can not mess with the salary, but then add a per diem, but I'm not sure a per diem is, you hear the abuses with per diems too, so,
Right.
I'd rather be more transparent than just say, the county board gets this for a salary, there's no per diems, you get paid your mileage for attending events, and, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. That's, nobody really has to ask for a public record to figure out how much per diems I received or whatever. This way,
Right.
This is your salary. And
Or Mr. Chair, along that, it might showcase who is doing a lot of meetings and work that per diems cover, and it might not then reflect what other work that was unseen by other ones. And so that's my concern with per diems.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Roll call?
Roll call. Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Persky?
Aye.
Commissioner Mergen?
Nay.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Chernoff?
And I'm a nay. Motion carried. I'm just on the 3% side, so. All right, we have that settled?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the last item, I believe, is coming up.
The last item before we do just a little bit on broadband is your action on the 2023 budget. There is a new resolution included in your packet too, because I am going to suggest a change to the budget that was most recently presented to you. And you did, at your last board meeting, make a number of changes to that preliminarily approved budget. I mean, made up for some lost highway state aid, made up for the need for dollars for the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center building, provided some money to match the state grants for the Quarry Park project and the Kramer Lake Park project, the Sheriff Mobile Command Center, and then we did our shifting of dollars, and we're not charging employees for parking anymore. And then we talked about earlier the part-time staff for veteran service. So you did those, and that altered the budget somewhat, but it did not change the proposed levy. After the Truth and Taxation meeting, the Budget Committee met and considered changes that could reduce the levy. Really, we talked about two things. One that's being recommended here is that when we began preparing the budget, interest earnings on investments were pretty low, and we're seeing that come back. We're also, we have a healthy fund balance right now. An example I will use is the broadband. We have $16 million set aside for that we've spent really nothing of that. And we'll begin to spend that, but we're still going to have a healthy fund balance. And so we think it's very, very safe to say that we're going to have additional interest earnings of $500,000. And we've worked that into the budget that you have before you today. The other area that we talked about is the debt levy. And as you recall, our debt obligations are not even $900,000, but our debt levy is somewhere in the area of $3 million. And so we've got a couple $1 million there that we've left that levy there, and those additional funds we're generating for whatever we decide in the jail justice center. And so we were talking like, well, if we're really going to use sales tax for that whole thing, we could reduce that. I don't think that it's time to do that. I think we'll know more where we're going to be in the coming year, and then we can make that decision on what we do with that debt levy. At least that's my recommendation. So what you have before you, and I'll get into it a little bit further, is $500,000 less in that proposed levy. This slide is a reminder that we're using a significant amount of fund balance to balance the 2023 budget. Now, a good chunk of that is really sales tax carrying over. We don't really consider that as ever needing to be made up again. It's truly one time, but we do have $500,000 that we're using in fund balance in the Human Services Fund, and then we have a few things that we're funding some smaller capital projects. And so those, we have to be cognizant of those as we think about the 2024 budget, which we know will have elections in it again, and that we've estimated an additional $675,000. We know what our bargaining agreements all are, and that's in the neighborhood of $3 million. Then we've got the fund balance that we use. So we're already sort of looking ahead to doing the 2024 budget, knowing that we're in the neighborhood of 4% probably already of additional expenditures that need to be funded with the levy. So that's what kind of went into our thought process as we moved ahead here. So what's being recommended today is a levy of $90,655,000 instead of $91,155,000. And so the tax rate will go down even more, and that total increase in the county's levy is 3.76% instead of the 4.3% that we've been looking at for months. It saves a few dollars for residential property owners. And remember, we're really up against a shift in valuation there. So we've got, arguably a pretty low levy increase compared to what I'm seeing other counties and cities do. But even if we didn't increase our levy, those residential properties are going to see some increase because of the shift. But of course, the $500,000 is going to be helpful. This last slide is just a reminder that because of that shift, we're going to have more people, more property owners that are going to meet some of the thresholds for some of the state reimbursements. So like the property tax refund, if your taxes go up more than 10%, you can file for a refund by going to the State Department of Revenue website. And then there's some other ones, but I think that very first one there is the one that more people are going to qualify for this year than any other year. And that concludes what we wanted to present today. Again, the resolution before you adopts the budget at the 3.7% increase in the levy rather than the 4.3%, because we reduced it by $500,000. We added $500,000 worth of revenue in the general fund.
And that's in your blue folders if you haven't looked. So any questions, comments for administration? Commissioner Bergen?
Just what was the amount of that new construction and all those things would add?
Bear with me just a moment, and I can give you that number, I think.
If not, Sarah might.
Yeah, I can't.
She's frantically looking to.
Well, the action, 1.55%, which would be about 1.3 million in increase in the levy. Thank you.
Thank you.
So not quite half being picked up with new construction.
Okay. You've heard from administration. What's the board's wishes?
What I'm encouraged to see, although it was a relatively slight reference, is pre-COVID, we were developing a pattern considering budgets not necessarily more than the coming year, but we were looking at more of a multi-year or long-term perspective. Maybe I wouldn't call it a dream list, but considering this in a longer time frame, not to where it locked us in multi-years, but at least get us to consider or be aware of where this would leave us multi-year. And I'm encouraged to start hearing that kind of reference again. The COVID adventure has knocked us off that track, but yeah, thanks for working that back into our consideration. That definitely has merit.
Okay. We're looking for a motion one way or the other to approve or deny the budget and levy.
I'll move approval.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. And
Okay.
Mike,
Thank you,
appreciate
Commissioner Persky.
the ability to do that. I had a good number of people question about where we were in the situation with the, increased amounts on their appraisal. So, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mergen?
I think I'll vote for this just to not create a risk of elevating Lee's heart rate again. And with the $500,000 reduction that Mike came up with, I think we're fine.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, just real quick,
Commissioner Clark?
I just was really glad when I had heard that they were able to figure out a way to reduce it a bit more. This is just a really hard time for folks, and because I say it almost every single meeting, hopefully the legislature will actually do something about property tax relief in this next year.
Which, could have been huge.
It would have been huge.
Found this $500,000 plus another
Absolutely.
million. Could have been in the low threes or right around 3 would have been
Right.
awesome. But, Unfortunately, we don't have that option. All right, not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And got a broadband update?
Just give you a quick broadband update. I notified you via email, but I wanted to be able to illustrate it and talk about where we're going to go from here. So we were successful with both our broadband, our border-to-border applications. And so as you recall, we have this whole area here. We're talking about from Sauk Center Township and Melrose Township all the way down into Luxembourg Township. That was with Arvig. And then the same color area here in Holding Township and Avon Township, predominantly in those two townships with Albany Telephone. And so both those were approved. And we committed with both, well, the Arvig one is like almost $7.9 million, and townships coming in with almost $400,000. And the Albany one is county funds of about $665,000 and township of $82,000. And so that's our commitment, and then the state will come in, and of course the providers are providing that. And then the phase 2 is this, the western project here, where Ashley Township all the way down to Crow River here. That is with Runestone. They're a company that is kind of northwest of our county. And that project is estimated that we'll need to put in about $3.2 million. This remaining, I'm thinking we might be in the neighborhood of $2 million. And if that's where those come in at, we would still have $2.2 million remaining of the $16 million that you've allocated to try to finish up some of these other areas in townships that are participating. And so we already have at least some conversations starting with those areas that are not in a proposal area now. And I think since we do have funds left over, we'll be able to leverage state funds again, or perhaps federal funds. And we have the townships. So I think phase 2 applications are going to be as strong, maybe stronger than the first, just because there'll be less competition, perhaps. And then at the same time, we'll begin soliciting proposals for those areas that need it. You've really already given me approval to move ahead with phase 2 with both Runestone and Albany Tel. I've had a lot of excitement from some of the township offices. I did email them all out and gave them this information. And of course, it's their partnership that really strengthened these applications. I mean, obviously, it's important that the board put that $16 million in, but to have those local governments coming in with dollars, with support, really strengthened our application. So construction for these two projects should start next spring. We're hoping that all will go well. Phase 2, I'm hearing that, or at least the providers are hearing that the stage is going to open up that second round of border-to-border application yet this month, which would be great because counties have ARP dollars. We have to spend them, as you know, by the end of, or at least commit them by the end of 2024. And same with the townships. And so time is of the essence because it's going to take a long time to construct some of these things. You had $100 million in grants given out, and so there's going to be a lot of construction next year and with fiber going in the ground. So anyway, it's good news. I wanted to make sure you knew where we were heading and answer any questions because hopefully we'll be making those next applications in January.
Well, thanks, Mike, for your hard work on this over the last couple of years, and Commissioner Clark on the NACO level for hopefully spearheading something there on the higher level. But yeah, it'll be great. Hopefully they don't have supply chain issues, and we get to see a lot of stuff moving forward. So thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, Mike, Cheryl, thank you very much. It's exciting to see this happening. It's a good thing. And Mike, with regards to phase 2, those that got denied on the initial proposals, when we go into phase two, would they have any type of priority, or will our offer, because of the nature of what we're offering or putting on the table, actually be beneficial to maybe defeat them or to get approved over those as well?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, I think in a lot of cases there actually won't be applications. The process for the border to border is when applications are made, then the deed, they publish all the application areas, and then there's the ability for other providers to challenge and to say, hey, I've already got plans to meet or exceed the state's speed requirements, or we already have service there. And so a number of the areas won't be reconsidered. There will be some that are reconsidered, but I haven't quite quantified all that. But there was, I wish I had it in front of me. I don't have, but there was 40-some challenges, so that were successful. And so those applications or those areas presumably are already going to be served or are being served, and nobody really vetted that out, but the state did once they got the applications. So those are out. There will be some that were denied that I assume will reapply. Yeah. But I hold out the same optimism just because of how this has been put together. The county has plenty of dollars in here. They've got commitment from every township that's involved. It's just an application. It's going to be 2 applications that are really strong.
And the providers are.
And the providers, of course, too. Yeah. In the Albany area, I'm sure we'll be in the area of 50%. They'll be in for 50% there. Over on the far western area, it's going to be, it's going to be a higher subsidy than that. Probably more like what we did with Arvig, somewhere in the 70% area. But that's why this program is out there, because the business, it won't work as a business model without that subsidy.
And if by chance, let's say there could be people that have been served now maybe since late fall going into next spring, so if they're already, let's say, hooked up prior to this approval, do those, I wonder if those RVIGs or Albany Telephone, do they come back then and say, can we get reimbursed for them, or let's, if they're not, if the take rate isn't that great, do the townships even, we ask them for all their money, or I suppose those are questions that will come up once this process gets going too.
Mr. Chair, I have to stop and think for a minute how we did that. Arvig in their proposal, and Albany, I think, as well, their take rate estimate is 50%. So if they're hopefully they're over that. They even hope they're over that, but it won't impact our cost. That's costs on them. Now, Runestone is going to propose that they do 100%, and what they don't hook up, they get back. Oh. So I don't know which is going to be the best, but we'll do a little analysis and try to decide which is the best way. But in either case, you're at a set amount. If costs go up because you got more takers, it's really going to be on the provider.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the update. And it's good news, so that's good for the county. And hopefully our residents see that improvement starting next year. All right. I guess the next item is issues by commissioners. Commissioner Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess a couple more points just building off of that, because it is really exciting and thinking about the, kind of the future proofing for communities that are going to be happening, and hopefully being able to continue to attract and retain businesses and populations in our county and in our region. There is, say this out loud because some people may not be aware of this, but the FCC is going through a challenge process right now, and so there's a whole thing about the maps and whether or not what was stated was correct, in particular with our ag properties. Is their service actually to where it's needed? And so that's why all the work that Mike and everybody here has been working on is going to be really important for the future. But if anybody is willing to getting on and using the Tested app and making sure that we've got the data so that we can actually appropriately challenge what those speeds are. And then the other two pieces that are part of all of this that we just need to keep thinking about is how are we helping people with take-up rates, because for those companies, for it to make it work, we need people to actually take up on the service, and then the affordability piece that we all keep hearing about. And there's some things our county's already doing, and there's some outreach we might be able to do more of, so excited about that. Commissioner Lenzmeyer might want to end up saying more about it. He and I were at the Downtown St. Cloud Summit last night about a vision for the future, and I had several people come up afterwards wanting to make sure the jail was staying downtown, so I'll say that part out loud. But part of the vision would be taking surface areas and turning them into housing and/or other kinds of things like have happened around the country. It seems like it's a vision that's in process, so there probably are opportunities for all of us to look at that. And it was packed. It was an absolutely packed place. It was interesting. And then lastly, I know that all of us are probably going to be doing this. Commissioner Morgan, I just want to thank you for not just your service, but I so appreciate the way you approach things. I think people might be surprised, you might even be surprised how many times we have similar questions, and I appreciate the way you look at it. I like the fact that you can go out of the board meeting and be able to be in social settings too. I mean, it's a good reminder for all of us that we might be intense in here sometimes, and yet we all are people who want to figure out how we could do things better. I think our board has been better, and the services to our county have been better because of you, and I really hope you don't go too far away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
I attended a session that is referred to that the city of St. Cloud sponsored last night about their, well, in broad strokes, their downtown redevelopment plan. The city presentation featured two primary speakers, and just like in our jail study, one fellow was the out-of-town expert with no local experience. The other speaker was an interesting guy. He's like maybe now in his late 30s, and he was from Pfalz, Germany, and he came over in a student exchange program that Dave Kleiss has been involved in, and actually graduated from high school from St. Cloud Tech, and name is Tobias Peter. Whereas the out-of-town wizard presented all these amazing things that happened in communities all over the country that we otherwise couldn't identify with, Tobias Peter, this young German, compared us to Fargo. And Fargo has done some remarkable things. He measured where Fargo was at in a number of parameters in 2005 compared to where they are now. And I think this guy, his presentation was much more relatable to us locals than the out-of-town genius. So made some remarkable observations. I got his business card here, but at some point, they're to the credit of the city, they're going to be trying to do some remarkable things, and Tobias showed us a practical roadmap to where we could go down that road. The notion that if somebody has no prior connection to the local jurisdiction, and we bring them in as a consultant, that somehow they add otherwise unachievable wisdom to the analysis. As I get older, I have less patience with that. You were there. We got BS.
Okay. Commissioner Persky.
Okay. You attended that last night about St. Cloud. Well, we were all down at the annual meeting. I'll just comment about that. Dr. Williams was there as well, and I think it was very well handled, a lot of good topics. From that, I think also one of the main speakers was talking about improving the quality of service, going from mediocrity to excellence. And that's one thing I think we've always tried to achieve here in Stearns County. In coming off COVID, I think we've learned a few things, and me mentioning also the household hazardous waste, where I think we can do maybe a better, improved job there. You know, maybe also in licensing, and that is with those flexibility of hours. So when we do our workshop, our retreat, maybe we can get a chance to see how we can maybe improve things here in the county. So not saying we're doing a bad job, because I think we're doing a good job, but we can always look for improvement.
Yeah.
And then I did allude earlier to Jeff about your 12 years of service. I really greatly appreciate having you on the board and the time you spent and your opinion. And again, sometimes we agreed on issues, sometimes we haven't, but I really want to know that I appreciate you considering you my friend.
Thanks, Joe.
Commissioner Mergen?
I really don't have anything, but I do have one announcement. This coming year, my bride and I will have been, in October, been married 50 years. Wow. So we're going to be having a celebration. It's going to be out in Richmond, Richmond Coliseum there, same place we had our wedding dance, our shower dance. So everybody's invited. It's October 21st. Party starts at 5.
Wow.
I'm writing it down.
Yep, no invitation sent, just an open house.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't make 50 years.
Steve.
I was just,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
I forgot to remind everybody that we are meeting with the legislative delegation next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. So we have confirmed, I think, 4 or 5, and if we Zoom somebody else, we'll have a pretty good participation by our legislators. So.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday,
All
9
right,
o'clock.
Thank you.
Here.
Yeah, right here.
I was just going to bring this up. We all get this NACO County News, and I don't know if you noticed November 7th when they had Stearns County in for the word search.
Oh.
I tend to do it every time I get it, so I was going to bring this up last month, but yeah, so Stearns County, Minnesota actually is in the NACO magazine with the word search, so if you haven't looked, I looked, so.
Wow.
So yeah, and they mentioned the courthouse in there.
Did you get them all?
Did I get them all? Yep. I got them all checked off anyway.
Wow.
And then, lastly, Commissioner Berg, you've been here for 12 years, and, on behalf of the board, I do have a certificate of appreciation. It says, awarded to Jeffrey Mergen, County Commissioner, in appreciation for distinguished and dedicated service to the County of Stearns, 2011 to 2022. On behalf of the board, again, I would also echo what others have said. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and serving alongside of you and utilizing your wisdom to help make decisions. So with that, we'd like to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Give you this.
Maybe you want to both come down here in front and we can get a couple good shots.
To the lower level there.
You're going to mention it.
When I say you over here?
Oh, it's upstairs? No, we're going to be in the audience. I told people for every.
Sure, that will work just fine. Maybe a little bit straighter back. There we go.
All right, I think that should conclude everything, along with the microphone going apart. But with that, I also would like to wish everyone happy holidays, and hopefully everybody has a happy new year, and I guess we'll see everyone next year. This meeting's adjourned.